Hey everyone, today we're going to cover Chapter 8, the nervous system. Let's get started. Alright, as an overview, your nervous system consists of your brain, spinal cord, and nerves. The functions of the nervous system is that it regulates and coordinates all body activities. Okay, so it's responsible for your autonomic and your voluntary motions that we had learned about last chapter. It also detects changes both internally or externally, evaluates information, and responds to stimuli. An example of this is, say you're standing in line in the grocery store and someone bumps into you. You feel that pressure of the person bumping into you. You know that just happens so that you can respond. You can move out of the way or step to the side. It's also the center of all mental activity, including thought, learning, and memory. We're going to cover the central nervous system, also abbreviated CNS, that contains your brain and your spinal cord, and processes and stores sensory and motor information, also controls the consciousness. Then we have our peripheral nervous system, PNS. It consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Its purpose is to transmit sensory and motor impulses to and from the central nervous system and the rest of the body. Divisions of the nervous system: you have your central nervous system and peripheral, which we just talked about. And then within your peripheral system, we have the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And as you can see, the somatic is your voluntary control, and autonomic is your sympathetic nerves or your parasympathetic nerves that control the involuntary. Peripheral nervous system, we have our afferent sensory nerves, which carry impulses from the body to the central nervous system. And then we have our efferent, which are our motor nerves, and those carry impulses from the central nervous system to the muscles and glands, and it also causes the target organs to respond. A good way to remember the difference between your afferent and efferent is, say for instance, you grab a hot pan and your hand is affected by the heat. That message is being sent from your hand where it got burned all the way to your central nervous system so that it knows, hey, we got burned, let's let go of the pan. So that was an effect. That's something that happened to us. Efferent, think you go to clap your hands, right? You're going to create an effect. Well, that is your central nervous system telling your hands to create that action, to create that motion. You're making an effect. So try to use those, relate those to affect, where you're being affected, to effect, where you're creating an effect. Then we have our peripheral nervous system that contains our somatic nervous system, which provides voluntary control over skeletal muscle contractions. And then we also have our autonomic nervous system, ANS, which provides involuntary control over smooth muscle, cardiac, glandular activity, secretions, and responding to commands of the central nervous system. So this would be an example of your food moving through the digestive tract. We don't have to think about that. Those nerves are already creating those impulses. All right, autonomic nervous system. You can see how we have our sympathetic nerves and our parasympathetic nerves. So our sympathetic nerves include our fight or flight response. So that's whenever we're in some kind of high intensity, stressful situation, your body goes into fight or flight. That is your sympathetic nervous system. All right, it responds include or not limited to constriction of blood vessels, increased blood pressure, and increased heart rate. So remember, when you're in something that's high anxiety, it's really intense. Now our parasympathetic nerve returns the body to a restful state. You notice how it's kind of like a weighted system. They even each other out. It's responsible for decreased heart rate, increased peristalsis of the intestines. That's the movement of your food through your digestive tract, peristalsis. And then increased glandular secretions and relaxation of sphincters. Quick question to ask yourself: what nerves carry the impulses from the body to the central nervous system, while blank nerves carry impulses from the central nervous system to the body? Remember that trick I was trying to tell you about earlier with the afferent and efferent? So remember, afferent is something that affected us, right? So it carries the impulse from the body to the central nervous system. While our efferent, because we're creating an effect, those nerves carry the impulses from the central nervous system. Remember, we're telling our body to do something to the body. So if you picked B, you are correct. Cells of the nervous system. Neuron is our functional unit of the nerve cell. It has three basic parts. You have your cell body, which contains the nucleus and cytoplasm. Axon, which carries impulses away from the cell body. Some are covered with a myelin sheath. And then one or more dendrites conducts impulses towards the cell body. Synapses is the space between two nerves that contains neurotransmitters for activation or inhibition of nerve impulses. Here you can see an example of a nerve cell. I'll come over here. So these right here are dendrites. See how they look kind of like branches? And then we have our cell body in the middle with the nucleus. And then we come on down with our beads of myelin. Notice that they are insulated. Each one has a little bit of an insulation to help make sure that that signal, that nerve impulse, is able to go as far as it can. Kind of think of like your cable for your TV. It's coax, but it's insulated, and the longer it goes, the weaker the signal can get. So that's why they keep them insulated, so that signal has the strongest and most chance at creating a strong connection. And this little space in here you can see is the synapses. That's that space where they're firing in between and passing on the message. Cells of the nervous system. Neuroglia. It's a connective tissue. It supports the system of the neurons. You can see this in the image on the right. It does not conduct impulses. It protects the nervous system through phagocytosis. Remember, osis is a condition. Phago is eating, cytosis cells, so it protects it against that condition. Types of neuroglia cells. Astrocytes, microglia, oligodendrocytes. Alright, central nervous system. You have the brain. It's surrounded by bone for protection, enclosed in the cranium. Spinal cord is surrounded by vertebrae for protection. The brain and the spinal cord are surrounded by meninges and cerebrospinal fluid. Right, our meninges, as you can see in the image to the right, contain the dura mater, which is the outermost layer of the meninges. It's tough white connective tissue. There's epidural space located outside the dura mater, and then contains a supporting cushion of fat and connective tissue. Then we have our subdural space, which is located beneath the dura mater, and it is a cavity that is filled with serous fluid. We also have the arachnoid membrane, which is the middle layer of the meninges, resembles a spider web, as you can get from arachnoid. Subarachnoid space, immediately beneath, it contains cerebrospinal fluid. And we have the pia mater, which is the innermost layer of the meninges, tightly bound to the surface of the brain and the spinal cord. Structures of the brain contain the cerebrum. It's the largest and uppermost portion of the brain. It controls consciousness, memory, sensation, emotions, and voluntary movements. Within that is also the cortex, which is the outer surface. It contains the gyri, which is the elevated, and the sulci, which are the grooves. Longitudinal fissure divides the cerebrum into two hemispheres, as you can see on this next slide. The cerebellum attaches to the brainstem. It contains muscle tone, coordinates, normal movement, and balance. Then we have our diencephalon, located between the cerebrum and the midbrain. Consists of many structures, including the thalamus, hypothalamus, and the pineal gland. Brainstem is the region between the diencephalon and the spinal cord. It consists of the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Serves as the pathway for impulses between the brain and the spinal cord. Controls many vital functions, including, but not limited to, respiration, blood pressure, and heart rate. Here's the structure of the brain. This is also found within your textbook. This is in there as well. Alright, spinal cord, pathway for impulses traveling to and from the brain, carries 31 pairs of spinal nerves and affects the limbs and lower parts of the body. Question: which part of the brain enables you to read this question and answer it correctly? If you said A, the cerebrum controls functions such as memory, you are correct. That concludes this portion of the presentation. Please move on to pathological conditions.